Hello boys and girls, welcome to another toilet bowl endangeringly thrilling episode of TechSpurt Weekly, the only tech news show where you're likely to hear the word felching within the first 7 seconds. And there goes my monetization for another week. So anywho, after the absolute orgy of new smartphones, tablets and other tech last week, this week has been a wee bit more sedate. And by sedate, I mean the only things that really launched were these here headphones. The Dick Swingingly Hyperactive Skull Candy Crusher ANC2. They won't actually crush your skull, but they do boast some rather ridiculous bass, enough to make your entire head vibrate more vigorously than your mum's favourite nighttime toys. Oh, and we also had a pair of Technic's True Wireless earbuds, the rather boringly titled, in comparison at least, EAH AZ80s and AZ60 M2s. If it was Skull Candy naming them, they'd probably be called the Ear Fister Extreme and the Clit Bomber 5000. They're pretty big and they ain't cheap, but if you want ridiculously good audio and excellent mics, then job done. And anyway, you can see more on these music spaffers right here on TechSpurt if you are so inclined. Anywho, in the absence of any actual interesting tech news this week, I thought I would slap on my Mystic Meg wig. And yes, I'm aware she didn't have purple hair, but this is the best I could do at short notice. And gaze into the future with a prophetic glance ahead at the best smartphones yet to come in 2023. Roll them credits! TechSpurt Weekly! Now, we may be halfway through the year, and we may have already seen bloody tons of these pocket-filling bastards launched between the bitterly cold dark days of January and the bitterly cold dark days of May. But we've still got lots of these... Honestly, who'd have hair? You know what, I'm sorry, the wig has to go. There's actually quite a lot to be said for being bald. But anyway, we've still got loads of new smartphones to look forward to in 2023 before a fat git with a bushy beard breaks into your house to stuff your sock. What's that? Your mum wants to stuff me? No, I'm talking about Santa Claus. Your mum wants to stuff Santa Claus? Whoa, filthy. Anyway, if you're about as patient as a pissed off toddler, well, the next new smartphone of the year will pop up just next week. I'm talking about Huawei's impressive new Bendy blower, the Mate X3. This is one of the most impressively skinny full-sized foldables that I've fondled. And yet, despite its slender design, you've got a 4800 mAh battery with 66 watt wired charging and 50 watt wireless charging. That 50 meg Ultra Vision camera should be a belter, and Huawei has also slapped on 2 bright and tasty OLED displays. Although it is powered by a slightly older Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 chipset, there's no 5G and no hot Google action, and it costs 2,000 GBPs, which I mean is just, well, f**k. Another phone we'll be seeing soon here in Blighty is Sony's Xperia 1 Mark V, which should be released at the arse end of June. Now, I already banged on at great length about the Xperia 1 Mark V in last week's show, and by banged on about, I do of course mean served up some incisive, well-informed commentary on Sony's latest pocket rocket. But if the thought of watching even more of me makes you sick up a bit in your mouth, well, it's faster, it doesn't get quite as burny, the camera's better, and it's more grippy. Sadly, I haven't had a chance to personally test out the Xperia 1 Mark V just yet, but hopefully by the time you're watching this video, I'll have my very own Sony blower stashed in my pants and my full review won't be too far behind. Next month, we'll also see the global release of Google's Pixel Fold, another savings draining bendy blower just like the Huawei Mate X3, except this time it unsurprisingly has all that Google shenanigans stuffed on it. The price is still pant-fillingly terrifying, however, so unless your daddy pot owns an emerald mine or something, you'll probably not be getting one. If you'd rather have a more sensibly priced Pixel, well, you'll have to wait till October time to clap eyes on the fresh new Pixel 8 and Pixel 8 Pro. These googly flagship phones could be a wee bit more compact than usual if the web rumours aren't a big pot of clagnut stew. There's even talk of the Pixel 8 being under 6 inches for a super satisfying hand feel. Woof! You can expect a beefy Tensor 3 chipset that's even more powerful and energy efficient than the Tensor 2, although will it be a match for the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3? Probably not, as it's a Samsung chip, but whatever. As long as the Pixel 8 phones don't get so hot that they roast your chestnuts when you slip them in your jeans, then that'll do. As for the cameras, well, there's lots of hot online chat about Google slapping even bigger sensors into the Pixel 8 and the Pixel 8 Pro, possibly Samsung's GN2, and there should be an upgrade to both the HDR capture and also the video shenanigans. Now personally, I loved and still love the Pixel 7 smartphones, but they weren't perfect. The weakest bits include the crappy selfie cams, the weak ass battery charging, and the fact that occasionally they would get hotter than the insides of an over microwaved Cornish pasty. So here's hoping that Google just sorts that little lot out, and then I'll be a very happy chappy indeed. Next up is the Nothing Phone 2, which Mr. Cole has already confirmed as coming in summer 2023. Don't expect a radical redesign, and chances are good we'll see that hyperactive disco-arse back in action, but now with a Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 for some proper serious grunt. This should also hopefully mean solid battery life, and fingers crossed we'll get some ringtones that don't sound like a nutjob firing off an Uzi in your back garden. And we should also see a launch for Motorola's latest RAZR Foldable in the coming weeks, possibly as early as June the 1st. Expect a bigger cover screen that doesn't squash your apps quite so badly, plus a Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 again, and hopefully an even bigger battery than last year's model. Alternatively, if you'd rather hang on a bit longer for Samsung's latest flexible wonders, well, you will have to be quite patient. The Galaxy Z Fold 5 and Z Flip 5 aren't expected to emerge before August. To catch up with other Bendy rivals from 2023, I'm expecting a re-engineered hinge to eliminate that awkward gappy gap. Not to mention a much bigger cover display for that Z Flip 5. And here's hoping for some upgraded camera tech as well to actually put them on par with the Galaxy S23 optics. And a shout out also to Asus's Zenfone 10, which is set to launch in the back half of 2023. The Zenfone 9 was one of my favourite phones of last year. Slip this delightfully dinky device into your jeans and it's polite enough not to probe your pancreas when you stride at pace. And while the Zenfone 10 is said to have grown somewhat with a 6.3-inch screen, it should still be easier to handle than most of the behemoths that I have to cram inside of my pants on a weekly basis. And again, I said many words about the Zenfone 10 while also bemoaning the death of mini mobiles in Techspert Weekly episode 153. So if that sounds like an excellent way of spending 15 precious minutes of your finite existence, well, have at it. And then of course, saving the best for last, there's the biggest smartphone launch of the year, which will be positively brimming over with incredible technical innovations and deservedly well accompanied by incessant whooping and hollering from an audience who almost certainly isn't sipping any kind of dodgy Kool-Aid. Yes, the iPhone 15 series should be launching in September, so brace yourself for many weeks of YouTubers in the Apple Circle Jerk Brigade forcing a grin and pretending that these hefty familiar looking slabs are cutting edge revolutionary handsets, very different to the previous generation and most definitely worth selling your firstborn for. Oh, and many S23 Ultra comparisons, they love that shit. Anyway, that right there is a joyful wee gander at some of the most thrilling smartphones yet to launch in 2023, and I don't know about you, but I'm so excited I might just hang back on the whole jumping into the bath with a toaster thing. But did I miss off your own personal pick of the best mobile still coming up in 2023? Well, don't forget to clue me in as to what a massive bellend I am down in the comments and let me know what your own picks would be. And now, regrettably, it is time for the part of the show that involves more flinging than a monkey party at a sewage factory. It's viewer comments. Viewer comments. Alright, and we're starting this week with Sue. Alright, Sue, hope you're doing well. Says, I'm surprised you didn't get cancelled yet. Believe me, Sue, no one is more surprised than I am. Technocrat says, in Canada, we had a naughty TV show called Ed the Sock back in the 80s and the 90s. So basically what you're saying is that absolutely nothing about this show is even remotely original, not even my crusty sock puppet companion. Well, you know what, if they can base an entire TV show around a sock puppet, then maybe I should try and get a Netflix series for Mr. Wang Sock. Get some of that sweet streaming money before the inevitable end of season 1 cancellation. Next up, Chris Official. Hey, how come you're the official Chris? How do you get that title? Official Chris says, hi, any news or updates on the Nokia Magic Max being released in the UK? Magic Max? Isn't that stripper dude that Channing Tatum plays in that movie? I've never heard of this in my life, unfortunately. No more news on Nokia releases in Blighty apart from the Nokia XR21, I believe it was, which is a follow-up to the rugged phone from like a year or two back. Tora says, ha ha ha, sometimes you are flirting with being demonetized. Sometimes. At this rate, I'll be hanging around the local Safeway with a bloody metal cup. Cedric says, hey Uncle Spurt, I love watching your review on the Poco F5, so bad that the phone won't make it to my country Kenya, since the name Poco is a Swahili slang meaning a prostitute. I've never seen Xiaomi selling the Poco brand here in Kenya. Yeah, that is most unfortunate. Kind of surprised that nobody in Poco actually Googled that word before settling on it as their entire brand. Although that said, you know what, I reckon if Samsung sold a smartphone here in the UK called the Cockbanger or the Crusty Jizz Tunnel, it would probably be a bestseller. Richard Noble says, "Oh Uncle Spurt, you tease, is that the Mobvoi TicWatch Pro 5 I see strapped to your spindly wrist?" Shh, no f***. On the subject of the Xperia 1 Mark V, Brandon says, "I was calling it the 1V this whole time. And mate, do not stress it. I attended many a Sony phone briefing before I finally figured out what the hell was going on. Not helped by the fact that they're generally quite generous with the free bars at these things. It's like when Apple started using bloody Roman numerals for its iPhones ever since the iPhone 10. I call that thing iPhone X in so many videos, which of course the Apple fanboys absolutely loved. Don't even get me started on the iPhone XR 10R. Like, is it a Roman numeral or is it a letter? Make your minds up, guys. This shit's been dead for centuries for a reason. It's total bollocks." Although there's certainly something about Apple using such an antiquated system to name its cutting-edge smartphones. Next up, Drive to Survive says, "I enjoy watching your tech reviews, but I feel you need to stop with the talk about drinking, being hungover, etc. and get to the point." I'm going to leave the response for this one up to Mr. Wangsock. "I'm gonna until you limp like a one-legged giraffe, biatch." Well, there you have it. Next, Mr. A says, "Always been a fan and owner of Sony phones ever since the Sony Ericsson days. Great days. I'm hoping they release the Xperia 5 Mark V at a more wallet-friendly price soon. This looks great, but too big and too pricey for me. The Xperia 1 Mark V is many things, but cheap certainly ain't one of them." I do like how skinny the Xperias are though. I've got to say, even though the Xperia 1 Mark V may be a 6.5 incher and all the Xperia ones before, they feel really, really great in the hands. Top notch hand feel, I would say. Again, still on the subject of the Xperia 1 Mark V, HT says the phone has a headphone jack and an SD card slot with a flagship processor. It's an instant buy. Yeah, gotta hand it to them. Whatever you think of their phones, Sony definitely bring in all of those features that most of the manufacturers couldn't give a shiny ballcock about. MSXXE says, "What do you think that Sony can do to have the best-selling smartphones, or at least close the gap with Samsung?" I mean, if they spent more than about a tenner on marketing, that would probably help. Like, Samsung have got this absolutely nailed. They spend an absolute fortune. Like, you can't even stream an innocent bit of step-sibling porn without being served about half a dozen S23 ads. I mean, I've seen absolutely enormous billboards advertising the Galaxy S23 hanging off the sides of cathedrals. Whereas on the flip side, nobody really seems to know about the Sony Xperia smartphones apart from us tech nerds. I mean, seriously, you go up to just an average Joe on the street who just has an Apple or a Samsung and say, "Did you know that Sony makes smartphones too?" They'll probably just stare at you like you just punched their mum right in the Tiger May Fury says, "I've been holding out for a new Xperia phone to take over for my current XZ2. Now that is a proper classic. Holy shit. I hope that's still serving you well. So I'm well overdue. Get your hands on that new Xperia soon, please, Chris." As I say, as I'm shooting this, I'm expecting that bloody smartphone to land on the doorstep of TechSpert Towers any second now. So yeah, fingers crossed. Neil McGuinness says, "Brilliant device for photographers who know how to photograph, or at least for budding photographers who want to learn. It's not really for snappers who just want pretty poppy pictures, true dat. I hope the overheating issues of past Sony devices is a distant memory and that the phone is not overpriced." On that last point, on the rest of it though, top tech lad Basil K has been doing some extensive testing on the Xperia 1 Mark V over on his channel Tech Edit. Definitely go give that a squint, some great content. And so far he's been testing out the camera quite extensively as well. Apparently the auto mode has been drastically improved, and also he was shooting a load of 4K video, and I believe it ran for hours and hours before finally the battery died. The phone did not overheat, so that's great news. So yeah, definitely go check out Tech Edit with Basil, and as I say, hopefully be spaffing out a load of Xperia content of my own soon. James Croucher says, "Dura, that's a posh tipple." You know what? You used to be able to grab a bottle of this stuff from the Amazons for just over 20 quid. Absolute bargain. I love it. So smooth. Very tasty stuff. Unfortunately, it seems to be bloody out of stock at the moment, so I'm kind of savouring this one, going through some of my other supplies in the meantime. But yes, highly recommend Amazon for the booze because it's generally even cheaper than supermarkets, and it means you don't have to bother pulling on pants and venturing outdoors. KMK0 says, "Truer words are rarely spoken. People are indeed shit." I mean, why do you think my best friend is some disagreeable footwear that smells of mouldy brie? Jerry says, I'm not a fan of the iPhone, but I've started feeling sorry for it. The brand has suffered. They might hire James Corden to get you in a headlock. I mean, if there's one thing that could possibly make me dislike Apple even more, it's them paying James Corden actual money to assault me. I just thought of my face being pressed into his armpit. Oh God. Paul Hatton says, apologies in advance, but an actual tech question here. Oh, we got so far, Paul. We got so damn far. I think my OnePlus Nord has now had its last security update. Do I need to bury it in the back of a drawer, never to be seen again, and replace it with something else? I mean, as long as you restrict your online activities to only the more salubrious porn, you should be alright. Salubrious means good, right? Not bad. Just stick to the least dodgy smut peddlers and hopefully you should be fine. Bang out of time as always, so I better make this the last one. Dylan X says, I absolutely love you, man. You're so fucking English. So English. English to the power of English, Mother Hubbards. So anyway, that's another show, and a massive thank you to everyone who commented last week. Fantastic as always. Please do smash your comments down below. We'll try and crack our way through as many of those possible next week. And speaking of next week,
this is about next week.
Well, zippity doodah, it looks like it's another pretty chill one. I haven't got anything in the tech diary, just more drinking opportunities, which is always a bonus. Of course, the week after that, it's then Computex and a Motorola event and all kinds of stuff going on, so there'll probably be a few tech tidbits coming out of that one. And that's another job. I wouldn't say well done, but it's another job done, so I'm buggering off to maybe drink some more of that Jura. Actually got a bit of a thirst on. Have yourselves a bloody wonderful weekend, and see you later.